Welcome to Partners for Progressive Israel's latest webinar. It's called Political Motherhood as a Moral Force. And we're hosting today in conversation for members, for leaders of Mothers Against Violence Israel. So welcome everyone who's tuning in the US, from Israel, from Palestine, other places in the world. This is the latest in Partners for Progressive Israel series called Conversations with Israel and Palestine. My name is Ron Skolnick, and it's my privilege to organize these webinars on behalf of the organization. Today's moderator will be Partners Executive Director, Rabbi Margo Hughes-Robinson. Before I hand it over to Rabbi Margo, I'll just note for those who aren't familiar that Partners for Progressive Israel is a U.S. not-for-profit. It's dedicated to the achievement of a durable and just peace between Israel and its neighbors, and that will require an end to Israel's occupation and a recognition of the right to national self-determination of both peoples inhabiting the land. Partners supports Israelis working to ensure social justice, Jewish-Arab partnership, and equal rights for all of Israel's inhabitants. The organization seeks to deepen Americans' understanding of Israel's and Palestine's complexities so that they can better advocate for a progressive future for all the inhabitants of the region. Partners is glad to be bringing to you this webinar to you for free, but you know the drill. If you appreciate it and would like more program like it, please help us at progressiveisrael.org and make a contribution to the best of your abilities. A quick note about programming before we get going. Two things to note today. On February 12th, Partners will be offering an online workshop as part of this year's conference on the Jewish left. For those not familiar, Boston University's annual conference on the Jewish left brings together scholars, students, and global partners of the Jewish left to discuss critical issues of the moment. Partners Executive Director Rabbi Margo Hughes-Robinson will be offering an online workshop called Confronting Genocide, Spiritual, Educational, and Organizing Resources for Calling in Our Wider Jewish Community. And we'll get the registration link for that online, I believe. Correct, Margo?
Yes, and I just put the website
Great.
as well in the chat.
Great. Second item of note is in a little bit over a month, we will be at the J Street Convention, as we always are, and that'll be February 28th to March 3rd in DC. Partners is a partner organization. We'll be exhibiting, and so come by and chat and learn more if you don't know enough already. A quick note about the chat here in Zoom. The chat will be open, but please use the Q&A function for questions because we're not intending to keep track of the chat for those questions. Sometimes people tune in late, they haven't heard that, so I'll repeat and people can share it with others. Questions should be placed in the Q&A, and the chat is just for ongoing conversation. Now, today, we're going to get to the conversation really, really quickly. So I'm just going to say that we have four leaders of Mothers Against Violence Israel with us today. They'll sort of introduce themselves and tell their stories as we go along. We have Ketty Bar, Susan Feit, Iris Rappoport, Yael Niv. Thank you to you all. Toda rabah lekulchem. And we're going to get underway with the webinar, and I hope you find it interesting, enriching, and important.
Thanks so much. I'll make
Oh,
it.
and also
Oh, go ahead.
one last
Go for
thing,
it.
for those who would like it and need it, we have translation, simultaneous translation into Spanish today. I believe the link is already in the chat, or how to access am I correct, Margo? How to access the translations in the chat?
Yes, there's an instructions should be coming in the chat. I believe they've been sent to the host and panelists, but we need it sent to everyone. I'll read it quickly. Para habilitar la traducción al español, hacer clic en más, seleccionar interpretación, ingresar al canal español. Deberían poder escuchar la traducción inmediatamente. And that's going to come in the chat as well. And I apologize for my poor Spanish. I'm doing my best.
Mine would be worse, but thank you also to Kevin Ari Levine of Merits Argentina for providing the simultaneous translation today. That's all from me.
Thanks so much, Ron. And thank you all so much for joining us from Israel, from the United States, from Argentina, from many other places. We'll jump right in. So Mothers Against Violence began in the summer of 2020, is my understanding. And I'd love to hear more about what were the circumstances that gave birth to this movement. I apologize if I overuse maternal metaphors here, but can you share a little bit about who you all are and how this began?
Start. Oh, was the time. It began in 2020. I established this movement because it was during the demonstration against Bibi Netanyahu because of corruption. And then we found something very new for us, the violence, the police violence against young people, against mother, against elders. It was something unusual in Israel. Because when you hear about the violence of the police against, demonstration Ethiopian or Arab community in Israel or in the West Bank Arabs, all the time it's come with explanation that the people that demonstrate, they are the violence, and the police has to protect themselves because of the people. And then the reason when we found it, I work in the morning and I said to my friend, okay, take a yellow vest and come with me to protect the children because we don't know what to do because our children raise them on democratics and this is a corruption. We don't talk about the occupation now. We talk about democratic. We speak about corruption. Was the reason and the moment we born. During these 5 years, we have a long, long way walking with find all the root of the violence of Israel. And then was very dramatic for us, like a mother, a grandmother, both of us, most of our leaders, beside Yael, that you raise a small kid. Now, most of us are grandmother too. And we raise our children and our grandchildren, something that we believe will grow up in democratic place. And we have the right to defend ourselves. But we never understood what we are doing to ourselves during these years, 58 years of occupation.
If I can add a word here, I think that the focus, so there are other organizations against violence. There's Mothers Against Violence here in the US. There's which is about gun violence, and there are organizations that are focused on gender-based violence in the family, etc. Mothers Against Violence Israel is really focused on the violence that comes, the systemic and institutional violence that comes from the government and its many tentacles through police and army, etc. So that is our focus.
Including what's happening in the Knesset, including what's happening in our communication, it's including what's happening in the court, it's including what's happening the way we're speaking on the street, it's including in education and our education system. That's the reason we found we're working every morning, and we found every system in Israel, it's a violent system.
And I think the other thing that distinguishes Mothers Against Violence is to be able to create the connections between violence in different ways, right? So as Yael was talking about the systemic violence, structural violence from the government, how it's all connected. So you can't be democratic in one place if you're an occupier in another. And if you're going to be a brutal police force against the Palestinian citizens of Israel, eventually it'll go to other minorities, and eventually the minorities won't be even the minorities. It'll be the people that disagree with you. And that's actually how you go down the slippery slope from democracy to fascism.
And maybe one last thing to say here. Well, I don't know if it's last, maybe Iris wants to say something too. But one more thing to say is it's really the name in Hebrew is not Mothers Against Violence, it's Motherhood Against Violence. And we are really thinking of motherhood as a value, as a moral compass of care for all children, not only our own personal children, not only children who are still young, children who have grown up. When Ketty said she went out to protect the children, those children in the protests were not 5, right? They were they were adults, but they were also children. And in that sense, Mothers Against Violence, we say it mothers because it's just like it rolls off the tongue better, but we are not all women. We're not all mothers ourselves. It's whoever feels strongly that motherhood is what is that value of motherhood and compassion and care is what is leading their decision making, that they have a place in our organization.
It's beautiful. Thank you. And I'll say with my rabbi hat proverbially on, so resonates with, right, the teaching in the Jewish tradition that the commandment to be fruitful and multiply, pruavu, is not just about having children, but also raising and educating, right? This collective care is also so deep in our Jewish tradition, and now in the way that you're expressing it as a political force. Yes,
Margo?
please, Susan, go ahead.
Before you go on, what I also want to say, because we often forget it, is that motherhood is also to protect our soldiers. Because when I watch a movie, for example, about what's happening in Palestine in the occupied territories, my heart goes out to the people, let's say in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. But I also think about what that does to my children or my children's friends who are soldiers and have to be in this force, or the police people, the men and women that are enforcing against their fellow citizens when they're exercising their democratic rights. So I think it's a broad concept of care.
I really appreciate you adding that, Susan. Thank you. Yes, that, like you said, I think so much of what I'm hearing you describe is the boomerang, right? That the tactics that are used in the West Bank when raiding a Palestinian village then become the tactics the police use, right, just last week on raids for Arab majority towns, Palestinian majority towns within Israel's borders. Right, that like the forced perpetration of violence has its own toll secondary to the direct victims, but that this whole system that you're talking about it's all connected. You mentioned sort of all these different interconnected pockets of state violence that you're attempting to counteract and to meet with real compassion. I would just love to hear more about how are you meeting this moment? What does a given week right now or a given day look like for members of your movement?
I'm laughing because we are overwhelmed of the work that we plan to do for the next year. So we are really working very, very hard. Like, for example, we started a project. In this movement, I'm coordinating all the according to my previous career. I deal with all I coordinate everything that connects with money. So money and all the aid delegations. So last weeks we were working very hard on a project in El-Khir. This is one project that we are dealing in. It started, the connection with this community started after the murder of Uda Adeline by a settler. And we started a few months that small groups of mothers came on a weekly basis there just to support the women of this community that they were very shocked. And from this connection, we started a project. We started to restore the library. That it was Uda's dream to establish educational children's center, peace and learning and creativity for the children. So we did the first step. We restored this room as a library. It's still ongoing project, but we just started. And it's going to be a very big project for this year. This is just one activity out of, I think, almost 10 activities that we are planning. So we are ahead of work ahead of us. So, and we are doing it. We know that we had of the last years, from our experience, we learned that we are planning great plans, but the reality is changing so quickly. And I think this is something that I love about our movement, that we are very flexible and we are reacting very quickly to the change in the circumstance without changing our backbones. We know what we want, and we don't lose our backbone because we adjust too rapidly to the reality, but we know what we are looking for, and we stick to it, although the reality is really changing. So it's just it's funny that we make big plans, but I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, if we have missiles from Iran or not. So what are we going to do tomorrow? I don't know. We know what our plans. We don't know what we'll be able to do.
Absolutely. Everyone in this work is having to be really, really nimble in this moment because of how much is changing. I'm curious too if you can speak to how some of your maybe prior assumptions about state violence have changed or have been challenged since engaging in this work. Even I think in the introduction a little bit, right, that you shared this kind of prior understanding that, oh, this is something that happens to, certain kind of protesters or anti-government protesters or part of the movement for Black Lives spearheaded by Ethiopians, both Jewish and non-Jewish Ethiopians in Israel. But how have some of those assumptions been challenged or really changed in light of this work?
Wow. It's too big for me to understand all the expression you have you put on the table about it.
I'm happy to shorten it if it's easier.
Yes.
But I'm curious how your assumptions or your understanding of state violence has changed as a result of being part of this movement.
I don't believe we changed something. I don't believe. But I believe and I know when we start, we open the conversation about violent, Israeli police violent, the politically violent, very clearly, very loud. And that's become, people can speak about it because before us, they speak clearly about the Israeli violence in the occupation, and they don't speak about police violence. It was, all the time, but not something the communication or some organization can come straight forward to say, we are against this police violence in Israel because Israeli policemen are violent. Was the beginning. And then we're going inside the occupation territory, and when we saw the soldier there, like Susan said, it was very conflict because we work with the Palestinian mothers, and they know we are the mother of the soldier, not the soldier that you see on the field, no, but we are the Israeli mother of the soldier. This is very, bring us a lot of time. It's not a conflict because it's not symmetria. If you say symmetria, it's okay to say
Yeah, symmetry.
Symmetry, okay, between me and them, because they need me. They need my protection. They need that I will see them. They need that I will help them. They need me. And I don't want they will need me because I don't feel right with this. But in the same time, I want to be straight with them that I'm not agree with my government. I don't agree with the violence, and we are against violence. Even if my child was in the army, my husband or my father or my brother, everybody in Israel goes to the army. It's part of our democracy. We need the army, but we don't need occupation. We don't need the occupier. We don't need violence. This is not part of our nation. It is a very, very rare for us to understand that we become a very violent nation. And then we're talking about genocide. This is worse because it's very hard for us speaking, not me, Ketty Bar. I speak loud about this. I don't care. But the community, the mothers, we are doing something so wrong. in the world. And I think this is the moment that we are coming straight and we point of all the problem. Even we are speaking with our people, with the Palestinian people, with all the minorities and the Ethiopian, all of them. In the same times, we know they are different. We are privileged. And from that, we have to make the correct, to change the world. This is the point of view of our, like Yael explain, and Susan and Iris. It's very hard, it's very hardworking, but you don't have any choice.
I would also say, as you probably can hear from my accent, people that don't know me, I grew up in the States and I've lived half my life in the States and half my life in Israel. And I've been a social activist in both places. And it's hard to be a progressive Zionist today. I am a Zionist. I believe that Jews need a homeland. I believe that we need to be able to defend the homeland. And there's a dichotomy there, or contradiction, a conflict, when you know that that's one part of who you are, and then on the other part, it is on my watch that my government is oppressing another people. And so then the question is, what do I do as a citizen, as an individual? Where can I make a difference in resisting or protesting my government's policies and what's happening in the world? And I think that that's important for a US audience to hear too, because when it's so overwhelming right now with all the different ways that your government is oppressing people, the question is, what can each individual do? And I think that that's the strength of our movement, which is being able to give individuals the ability to make a difference by nurturing relationships with people that are different, by creating projects that create some kind of understanding, and also through projects that honor those who are working with us. So when Iris talked about it, Ketty mentioned that we have a differential in power. Iris talked about our project in El-Khir. The people that are going to be leading that are the women of El-Khir, not us. So we will be finding the funding, but they're dictating their needs. And so our job as a privileged group is to find a way for them to realize dreams and to realize a little bit of a better future. That way, building the relationships for tomorrow, for a better future for all our children.
I also want to add, kind of also seeing what's being asked in the chat, and given your question, Rabbi. I think one of the things, and I should say, I did not join Mothers Against Violence in 2020. I wasn't in Israel, Palestine at the time. I was in the U.S. I happened to be in the land in 2023, the year where everything kind of went to hell even more than it was before, with the new current government, and then October 7th, and that's when I met Ketty and joined Mothers Against Violence. But what I've seen from the side, looking at how things have changed over the years, is maybe things that are obvious to Ketty and to Iris and to others that are in the original leadership are not obvious to others in Israel. So basically saying, wait, we need to put a barrier between the violent police and the protesters was a completely new thing that started people thinking, who is violent? Who is this violence? Who is this violence hurting? And how can we support ourselves in ways that are not being violent back, but ways that are peacekeeping, that are, like a mother when her two kids are fighting, she comes and says, okay, each of you go to a separate room, let's find out. So literally standing there between and saying, okay, to the police, what do you need? You need these people to move? I will make that happen. Turning around saying, can you guys move a little bit? That the go-to response in a country that's been so ravaged by violence and war and conflict for so many years is everybody immediately goes for force. But we, as mothers and with the value of motherhood, know that force is actually the least efficient way to solve problems. And there are many other ideas. And so it starts from that, but then really our role, people are asking, what exactly do? We bring to light ideas, a lot of education, a lot of saying, here's a problem. Here are possible solutions that are not your go-to violent, I will be stronger than the other side solution. And what Mothers Against Violence say becomes then the trend slowly, too slowly, but other people, then other organizations come and do the same thing. And we might actually kind of let go something once we see that it's caught up enough. We don't have to be the ones actually implementing. We kind of give the idea, throw it out in the air, and Ketty comes from art curation. And so she is used to, you present, people will take it and run ahead with it. And I think that's how it started, from protests and went to and what's happening in the West Bank, and went to what's happening with the hostages, and went to what's happening with the soldiers who are getting morally injured in this war, and what's happening with Gazan children and babies and families, and how can we think of all of these? And we're a small organization. We don't have millions of dollars. We're not going to actually give the humanitarian aid anywhere, but we can lead the way of thinking, how do we solve this in a way that dispels the violence? It's not diffuses the violence.
I can say something else that while Yael is talking, I thought about 7 October, because we were in the territories before 7 October. We were there a lot. And we saw that we learned from what we learned during the years is, and Susan also mentioned it, that we want to protect our children. We said we must leave the territories just to ensure our children's. We saw so many youth have PST from this service in the territories, and we said, to protect our children, we must go out. And we were thinking that while we were talking, they were many. We, as Yael mentioned, it's not only women. We have also men during our sessions and Zooms and meetings, and we saw that usually men with the military experience, they look at us and said, what do we understand? We said, we need to go out from the territories. And they were looking, you don't understand anything. And if in what we understood without being, without a lot of experience in the army, just beside our service, we understood that we are so many groups there and so many soldiers in the territories. And we started the campaign of yellow ribbons. Many months before 7 October, we started the campaign, take the soldiers out of take them home, bring them home. And we used the symbol of the red, the yellow ribbons. And when 7 October happened, unfortunately, we see the proof that we were so right, because it was so painful to be correct, and without being expert in security, we just simply saw the number of soldiers in the territories compared to those who should have been on the borders, and they weren't there.
Yeah, absolutely. That this insight doesn't always come from, like you said, spending time maybe deeply in a military complex or military understanding, but that you're sort of incubating this very different point of view to sort of diffuse, to mirror Yael's words within a broader Israeli society. I'm seeing a lot of questions in our Q&A about your partners. Who are your partners in Israeli society? Is it other NGOs, other movements, individuals? Sort of who are your fellow travelers in this work?
We are working with all the organization, the left-right organization, human rights organization, and we are the big organization, the mother that lead in the left side, the big mother. We have the peace, women,
Women wage peace.
women wage peace, but we are more radical, more extreme, more activist, less less talking with politics about solution or change something. We think that should stay on the street, say bring our idea to the street, working with other people, organization, and trying to find a way to make a different kind of speaking, not the politically away speaking that all NGO speaking because of their fear from, in Israel, it's a lot of fear from the government and the rules that come every morning in new rules that you want to destroy you. And now it's the academic rules that come yesterday. Before this, there was all the Minister of Culture in Israel. It's become like one part of DBS, one of them that all the artists, and that's the reason we don't write ourselves NGO, but we are working with all of them. Tomorrow morning we are going all the Mothers Against Violence with all the organization to Jordan Valley. The big demonstration and the deportation of the community Russell Ain in Uja, and they asked from us to bring a lot of yellow vest, because in our yellow vest it's right, mothers and against violence, and we were
in many languages. Not only in one language.
And the organization never asked me to bring that. And we're coming because this is our vest, and that's we are doing. And we are not carrying only shlutim, signs. Okay, signs. But the mothers, this is our statement. And they asked me, please bring a lot, because we want the army will see you tomorrow. The mothers, and the mothers, they will see, because we know when we're coming with the buses, the army will stop us. And we know what.
Iris is modeling the vest for us.
Yeah. And this is the kind of our working with a different kind of organization, together with programming in the field, demonstration together. Each one have his idea how to work. Sometimes overlap, but because we are the women and elders, we bring something different to the young people.
And also, Ketty, I think Ketty has an ability to network with all kinds of people. So it offers behind-the-scenes support. For example, there was an Israeli film. There's a Solidarity Film Festival, and so Ketty worked with the director there behind the scenes to make sure that events were up and running and to troubleshoot and things like that. We're partnering right now through a grant that we just received from a EU affiliate. We're partnering with a women's organization, a feminist organization that is not traditionally in the peace field. So I think part of the appeal of Mothers Against Violence is that it's not associated with a particular with anything particular, so that allows us to, and we're not an organization, we're a movement, and that allows us to be nimble and sometimes to work with breaking the silence, but other times to work with the feminist, the Isha Leisha, which is a veteran feminist organization in Haifa. Those are just two different examples. We'll be working with women in the Bedouin community of Rahat. We work with feminist activists, Palestinian citizens of Israel. So it's very varied. We both work with organizations and with individuals, reaching out with personal connections, but also organizational.
And the positionality as mothers it gives us access sometimes to places where there is no access for others, or basically protects us from violence because we are seen as, well, as mothers, right? Like, who's going to hit their mom? So even going to the West Bank, the vest that Iris is demonstrating, we wear it. They see it from afar. The settlers know who we are. The Palestinians, the residents know who we are, and everybody knows that we're not there to provoke. We're not there to add violence. We are there to help, and there is some agreement. I mean, you know, as things get more and more violent, even that is violated from the settlers' side. But there is, in general, an agreement that we can operate.
That makes so much sense. I'm sure just even the visual of like, yeah, the moms are here. I think maybe from folks in the US who might be familiar with the Nuns on the Bus initiative to do voting rights protection, might be similar. It's a similar kind of dynamic from what you're saying of like nobody wants a picture, God forbid, of them being violent towards someone in a habit. Similarly with the yellow vest, it's a surprising amount of protection. So I wanted to also ask about an initiative, how I got connected to Mothers Against Violence, which was not on the ground, but a little bit different. So Partners and MAVI worked together for the first time outside of the United Nations last fall. We were in front of the French mission to the UN just hours before Rosh Hashanah to jump in the car, drive to my pulpit, but in support of the French-Saudi plan for a Palestinian state. I believe the sort of spin-off initiative is called Mothers for Recognition. And I'm curious, what drew you to that issue, since most of your work is so in the thick of it, on the ground, on the street, or in a village? Why then also have this presence outside of the French mission in New York?
Susan or Yael, this is very important to recognition and reconciliation. This is our campaign. We have two campaigns that we running during the war start in the initiative of Arab Saudi and French initiative in the UN, and the recognition of Palestinian state, you know. And we decide, we know that, like Yael explained before, we know the solution is the Palestinian state. We know that, everybody knows that. You have different kind of ideas how it's going, you know, 2 countries, 3 countries, republic. One country. I don't care about how it's going to be after you're going to see it and to find the solution, diplomatic solution. But before the diplomatic solution, we have to speak to the people in Israel, the Jewish. If you don't recognize the Palestinian, if you don't reconciliation with them together, we don't find a peace. We don't find a peace inside of us. And I called it yesterday because I have to convince somebody that he don't agree with me. And I said, I'm not giving a solution. We don't have the power to give a solution. We are not a movement. We don't have it. You have a different kind of movement in Israel and Arab and across the world to find a solution between Israel and Palestinian. But we have something to sow. איך אומרים לחרוש את הקרקע באנגלית?
To plow the land.
Field.
Yeah, the field.
To plow the field, that when they start to speaking, we know how to grow up with this. We starting to live with the idea that we have a Palestinian state, we have Arab Israeli citizen, we look for equal, we look for justice and to reconciliation, and not forgiving, but reconciliation. And I think this is the way to find a solution. And when we start with this, I remember the first time when we put our statement on the website, and people was very exciting about this in the first time. And the other side of groups, no, don't do it, can't do it. But everybody after 6 months talking about this. We have to recognize the state of Palestine. The other thing, the second point that we start speaking about, the campaign we are doing, it's the multinational force for defense in the occupation territory. This is a solution for all the violence in the occupation territory.
And can you share more about that call for people on the call who may not be familiar with it, the international force that you're asking for?
את יכולה להסביר לי רגע? אני צריכה לנשום שנייה.
Sure, I think, just to go back to the original question you said, Rabbi, that, we're usually very focused inside the land, and how come we went outside in this way? I think there's a growing recognition, and mothers against violence are always first, but then like more and more people recognize that we need help from outside. The forces in power right now, and people are asking about this also in the Q&A, the forces in power, the government right now is very, very violent, fascist, no other way to say it. And we are not expecting any help from them. But also people in Israel, Palestine are very limited by a specific narrative. What they see in the media is not what we see here in the US, is not what we see in the rest of the world. And it is very, very hard to make the big shift that is needed just from inside. So asking the world to recognize Palestine is one thing, but the next thing is asking the world to come and be peacekeepers in Gaza, in I don't know if part of this will be West Bank, but like first to start with in Gaza, because we're saying, while Hamas, our government is saying, while Hamas is there will be no peace. In fact, while we're there also will be no peace. While we and Hamas are the only ones there will be no peace. And so what we're calling for is for the world to do what they have done in other places as well, to bring an international peacekeeping force. As I said, what mothers do, put the fighting children in each in their own room. We need that. We need that help from outside. This is not going to come from the IDF. At this point, the IDF is not going to do it.
We don't trust the IDF.
I also wanted to add something because Ketty, that's actually my entree into the organization. Ketty said, "Oh, Susan, why don't you head up the global coalition for the recognition of the state of Palestine?" And my response was, "Are you kidding? That's what I'm going to do right now? Why would I do that?" And especially for those of you who are familiar, I don't know what it's like in the Jewish community in the States or the wider community. In Israel, that's almost being a traitor, right? That's giving Hamas a win. How can you talk about the state of Palestine, the recognition of the state of Palestine first? And I thought, that's how I'm going to start the communication. And then I took a deep breath and I thought about it. And I thought, yeah, no, exactly. This is exactly what I need to do and what we need to do, this and the international force, because Rabbi, it does come from the same place of motherhood, which is, I see you, I recognize you, I humanize you. I am working with another people that's in distress and being oppressed. That's my responsibility. I have to be able to recognize that. I have to take the responsibility for that. And I have to show the world that there are people, there are Israelis that we're working to say, we recognize the rights of Palestinian people to self-determination in whatever way that's going to look like, because Ketty's right. We're not the politicians that are going to give the solution, but there are Israelis that recognize that the only way for security and peace for Israel is security and peace for the Palestinian people and their dignity. So actually, it's very deep in motherhood of I see you, I respect you, and I want to find a way to reconciliation.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, is there something you wanted to add before I moved on to the next question?
I just wanted to say that it's really, setting our sights on the long-term goal, or in this case, I mean, the international force is an intermediary goal. The long-term goal is really living side by side with dignity, security, humanization of everybody, and then just charging to that, hoping that others, they all think that we're crazy and they think that we're traitors and they call us names, but after a while, it suddenly starts coming in, and someone asked in about refusing to go to the army, and I just wanted to give an example that in one of the big protests in Tel Aviv, which are not about the Palestinian situation, and they're really focused on something else, we were giving away stickers that said, bring our soldiers back home, which is basically we want, the army out of the West Bank
ושבו
and
בנים
Gaza.
ובנות לגבולם.
Yes, bring our children back
biblical
home
quote.
from the Bible, but we changed it to say, bring our soldiers back home. And a woman said to me, I want to see you handing stickers saying refuse to go. That's the sticker that I want. And I was really impressed to hear that from someone, on the street in this protest, because that's really taboo in Israel to say that. But, things change. And how did they say it? Extreme times call for extreme measures. So
Yeah, I will say I'll add as a mother myself, I do think a piece of the experience of motherhood is also that like bittersweet holding inside of like, I told you so. Like we all knew we were gonna get here, but you needed to find your own way, and I will provide the structure for you to do it.
And the last thing I just wanted to say that really highlights something that Susan said, which is really realizing that the really deep source of violence against Palestinians is dehumanization. So the way to solve that is humanization. Anything that goes to the direction of humanization, and whether it's building a library for the kids and having giving them what we would give our own kids, right? Which would be a place to study and read and learn, etc. To recognition of their self-determination as a state.
But looking ahead to the future, I wanted to ask, I'll give her a little shout out because she's on the webinar right now, but I was in conversation with Steffi Kirshner, who's here, one of our attendees this morning, actually about generational trauma, which, right, I feel like since we all started talking about epigenetics a few years ago, people talk a lot about in Jewish communities, right? What we learned from our families growing up and the way that pain can get passed down through generations. And I'm really curious if in your dreaming as a movement, how your movement might support a kind of generational resilience. So like B'kitzur, right, on one foot as mothers, political mothers, not just the mothers of individuals, what are you hoping to seed or to pass down to the next generation of Israelis and Palestinians?
That's a big question.
You can take a minute. I sprung it on you. And I hope you're also seeing the love that you all are receiving in the chat for the work that you do. Everybody doing this work on the ground right now is so ridiculously underthanked. And I do hope you take a minute I'll save this chat and send it to you if you want. Bask in a little bit of the love and appreciation you're also receiving.
I would ask Iris or Ketty, one of the things that we're doing for the trauma is the project that we have scheduled.
Yeah. Yeah, we have one initiative that is going to talk about the trauma. It's going to be, I hope it's going to be a very nice initiative. It's thinking about subject, any object. I can bring something. I can bring my grandmother candles from diaspora, and someone can bring his key from Jaffa, and we can speak together about our traumas. So we think about kind of these meetings that we hope to have during the next month. I don't know what's going to happen eventually, but this is kind of ideas that we have. But your question is a very big one, and I think I can tell you that after October 7th, because I deal with all the ed delegation, it was very, very difficult days for us. Because we started the ed delegation before 7 October. We started it in 2021. I won't talk about it. It's a long story, but we we understand the situation there, and what we saw, because we were there and we saw the situation, and we got connection with the community, especially in Masferiata, and we started aid delegation. Basically, it started with food and medicine, and then all other needs that we suddenly learn to know what they need. But I think after October 7th, we were really shocked, and it was really difficult even with our mothers. We had to stop for a minute and decide, are we going to continue with the delegation or not? And I think we really immediately started, it's not only that the needs are bigger than they were before, because the circumstances were very difficult there. People were not going to work and anything. It was really terrible time. It's still there, still difficult there. But I think what my decision was, it's not about their needs. It's just, I felt that this is only way to maintain my humanity. And I think if you ask big question, I don't know, I just want my children to live in a place that people are human to each other and solidarity to each other. And I don't care if they are Palestinian or Jewish or Christian. I really don't care. This is what I want to educate my children. And I just hope they'll be able to live in Israel in this environment. This is my dream.
So I'm the daughter of two Holocaust survivors, and my parents survived because of my parents suffered because of fascism and dehumanization, and my parents both survived because of people's actions and bravery. And that's a pretty strong legacy to have. I do have generational trauma. I do have a heightened sense of danger that other people don't. I know that. And yet, what gives me strength is resisting, is showing that I will not let that stop me from doing things that I'm afraid of. Some things it stops me, but I hope that it doesn't stop me from everything. But it also doesn't release me from the responsibility of trying to do what I can to humanize other people. And I think the danger with the Jewish people, my people, is to focus so strongly on our own trauma, not to recognize also our responsibility for perpetrating trauma on others. And so what I'm trying to teach my children, and they're grown now, is two things. One is that that remember that you were a stranger in Egypt, and to keep that in mind, but also that each and every one of us has a responsibility and an ability to make a change in the world, and we have to do what we can to make a difference. So that's what I'm trying to model for my children. And hopefully one day I'll have grandchildren that I can model that for.
I'm really glad that I had time to think about your so important question, Rabbi. And it made me think of something that someone else said. So one of Mothers Against Violence actions, what we do a lot of education webinars in Hebrew that bring more perspectives to people. And September, I guess it wasn't 2025, it was 2024. We did this big project that we called, it was 21 days of a Zoom every single day with experts. We talked about connecting the dots, seeing how all of these different manifestations of violence and people feeling desperate and people feeling scared, how they're all connected psychologically, historically. Like it was really amazing. And one of the people that we heard from there is Maya Savir, who has studied genocide and reconciliation, has worked a lot in Rwanda. And one of the things that she said that she heard, she said she was in Rwanda at some point working with two children the parents or grandparents of one had killed the grandparents of the other. And they were now working together. And she asked them, how can you do that? And how does it, is it real, this reconciliation? Or is it, you kind of have to, but inside you're not really feeling it. And it wasn't these two men who told her this. She said she talked to the mother of one of them, and she said, you know that your parents were killed were murdered by the parents of the other person who's working with your son. And she said, look, we have two options. We can continue the cycle of violence and maintain the conflict, and then our children pay the price, right? Our children are the soldiers, right? Our children pay the price. Or we can reconcile. We don't necessarily forgive, but we can just decide, okay, my loss is already my loss. That's it. Done. I will never get my parents back. I will never get, we won't all get all of the land. We won't all get everything that we want. She said, when we reconcile, we pay the price. And instead of our children paying the price. And I thought that was so powerful. So when you're saying generational trauma, I think part of what's maintaining generational trauma in Israel, and I'm a granddaughter to Holocaust survivors, we have generational trauma, but I think the continual violence is what maintains generational trauma, is that cycle of violence. Someone has to break it. The only way out is we break that cycle. We say it stops with me, and my children can live a life that is not shadowed by constant fear, which reminds them of my trauma, of my grandparents' trauma, of my parents' trauma. They won't have to think about that if they're not living in fear.
Maine, thank you. Beautiful. I'm going to pass it back to my colleague Ron, but I'm sitting with such deep appreciation for each of you and your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I know that at least some of you have another either meeting or event to hop onto in about 2 minutes. So we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you to Ketty, Iris, Susan, and of course to Margo. Thanks to everyone who joined us. I'm just going to note really quickly for those who missed the opening that partners, Rabbi Margo Hughes-Robinson is going to be leading a workshop at the Conference on the Jewish Left on February 12. If you scroll up on the chat, you can get more information and also be in partners' emails, and that will be on the question of confronting genocide. And we'll be at the J Street Conference, February 28th to March 3 in Washington, D.C. And while we had this webinar, I just got confirmation we have another webinar coming up on February 5 on track to activism and how the nonprofit world can contribute to the peace process in the absence of Israeli government action. So we have all that coming up. Thank you for joining us today. And we hope you can join us next time. And of course, the program's been free, but to operate these programs, to run your organization, we rely on your contributions. So if you can, visit progressiveisrael.org, check out upcoming programming, statements that we make, and if you can, make a donation. Thank you again to Ima. I didn't know until today that it was Imahut Neged Alimut and not Imahot Neged Alimut, but Mothers Against Violence in English. Thank you so much for sharing your
Thank
stories
you.
and your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks all. And thank you again to Kevin
So
for
much.
translating.